Summer and fall of 1880 was a good time here at Silver Reef. The mines were going well. 1,500 people were living here at the reef. But by late summer, some of the mines had started to play out and close. Some of the miners were starting to talk about maybe moving on to another camp, but still it was good. Wages were good. It was late summer. The mine bosses, they want to make their money, and they had been paying $4 a day, which was a pretty good wage for us miners. But then the word came down from the bosses that since times were harder for them, they were going to cut the wages to $3. Michael Carbis was a shift boss for the Stormont Company. He was a good boss, did a good job, a fair man. He supervised right down in the mines, and one of his crew was an Irish Catholic miner named Tom Forrest. Well, Forrest has kind of a reputation as a troublemaker. He didn't like the wages being cut, started agitating with the other miners that maybe we ought to go on strike or maybe do something to get the wages back where they were. A lot of the miners kind of listened to him. Michael Carbis did what he could to kind of calm things down, being the shift boss, but still Forrest continued to kind of agitate and make trouble for everybody. For the mine bosses, the solution to that problem was pretty simple. Just fire Tom Forrest. The word came down from the bosses, down through the superintendent. Don't really know what Carbus thought about it, except he was doing what he was hired to do. Called Forrest aside and says, "You're through here, you're fired, you're done." Well, of course that didn't sit well with Forrest. Work went on that shift. Forrest started making threats, started to make some trouble, went to the Cassidy's saloon. Some of the guys said they even saw him sharpening his big old hunting knife and drinking probably more than he should. By the next morning, he had really worked himself up. Mr. Carbus was on his way to work, had left his place at the Buckeye boarding house, heading down toward the mine, and Forrest stepped out of one of the shacks and says, "I need to talk to you." And he threatened Michael with the knife, pulled the knife, approached him, and actually just swung the knife, cut Mr. Carbus open right in the guts. Didn't die immediately, but it was a grievous wound. One of the deputies happened to be close by and had approached Forrest, but Forrest ran off. They carried Michael Carbis home. He died later that evening. The town was pretty agitated. Carbis was a well-liked man. A lot of sympathy for his family, especially for the widow and the kids. Just wasn't the way that even some of the hardest miners thought that should have been handled. Town here was very upset and agitated, ready to do something to see justice done because of what that Tom Forrest had done. The sheriff had come up, and the deputies, they got a tracker and they found Forrest hiding in one of the mines or the mine shaft. Took Tom into custody, brought him over here to the little wooden Silver Reef jail and locked him up. Michael's oldest son even kind of came around the jail, and one of the deputies told him, "No, this isn't the way to handle it." A lot of talk started around town about we need justice. We're going to just go to the jail. We're going to have a necktie party. We're going to lynch this guy. Well, of course, the sheriff got wind of that, and the deputy got wind of that. I don't really know what was going through Forrest's mind at this time, being locked in that little tiny cell with people agitating, walking around, and he had to have heard what the talk was. most of the town, pretty much everybody turned out for the funeral, and at some point in that time, Sheriff Hardy from down at St. George made the decision that he didn't want the guy at the cell here with all the talk of lynching, especially I guess figuring that after the funeral there'd be a lot of angry miners going back to the saloons. The deputies and some of their help took Forrest out of the jail here, took him on down to St. George, where there was a fairly new jail at the old courthouse down in St. George. Well, you know, after the deputies and the sheriff decided that that little wooden jail at Silver Reef wasn't going to hold Forrest from an angry group, from a lynch mob, got him out of the little Silver Reef jail and brought him right down here to St. George to this jail where we are now. The word went around town that they'd kind of been tricked by getting Forrest out of town. Quite a few of the miners and some of the others around town decided that wasn't going to do, that they had made up their mind that Forrest needed some justice and needed it right away. That night, maybe as many as 100 of the Silver Reef men got together, came down just about 20 miles from Silver Reef down here to the fairly new jail here in St. George. The group was angry, and they had decided that they were going to take Forrest and give him the necktie party, do the lynching. They grabbed the sheriff, they overpowered him, and then one of the deputies that was here at the jail. The mob had taken the jail keys, and they came down the stairs, got him in the cell here. The door opened. At that point, Forrest was fighting. He decided the only thing he had left was to fight. But that many men easily overpowered him, drug him up the stairs. He was still fighting, but they had him pretty well subdued. So they hauled him out to the corner here, those newfangled telegraph poles. Decided that was the place to do the deed, so they threw the rope up over the arm of the telegraph pole, put the noose around Forrest's neck, and several of them grabbed the rope to drag him up and get the job done. Well, he was heavier than the strength of that arm on the telegraph pole, broke off, fell down, and mob continued to drag him, and they about a block east of here. They caught him home. He had a big cottonwood tree. So they took old Tom, and that's where they finished the job. They pulled him up, and that's where he died. They left him hanging there. Kind of went on back to Silver Reef. The word went around that there was a man hanging in Cotham's cottonwood tree. That was shocking, I suspect, to the people here, but there was even a sense here in St. George that the killer had gotten what it deserved. As they were gathering around, one old fellow was heard to say, "Well, you know, watched that tree grow for 20 years, first time I ever saw it bear fruit." They took the body up on the hill somewhere and buried him just north of here. There was never anybody arrested as being part of that vigilante group, that mob. I think even the sheriff maybe had a sense that Tom Forrest should have had a trial first, but they gave him what he deserved after he killed poor Michael Carbis.